about?
One of the blames that we suffer collectively is that we are not out in an environment with people like you are being invited to events such as you invited me here today, and take the opportunity to explain that all is not well in the castle, or all is not well in the house, and to explain to the public that all the reasons why it's not well have nothing necessarily, are not exclusively the cause or the problem of black people. Now, I will tell you that I am disappointed with many of our young African Americans who get involved in drugs and crime. I don't see poverty as the reason why they should get so involved. There's no reason for young people shooting each other in the streets, but there's a level of frustration that is at a critical level. We are not seeing anybody in the political arena, locally or nationally for that matter, who offer hope towards changing the dynamic. When our African Americans succeed in business and government, many of those that don't have to stay in a jurisdiction move out the jurisdiction, and they don't come back to help. I take blame, and the black judges, in my opinion, there are a lot of great black judges, but because of the judicial canons, they believe that they can't do certain things and talk about certain events. I was pleased to see Judge Baker going into another, Reggie Baker from Markham going into another camera room here tonight to be interviewed concerning black youth and giving some comments about it. But we need more judges like Reggie Baker out in Markham, Marcus Salone from 26 in California, Blanche Manning in the federal court system.
So you do at least admit that some of the problems that you're talking about are caused by black people themselves?
Oh yes, they always have.
Okay.
After all, there was a black person that turned in John Brown that stopped black folks from moving ahead earlier.
With the time we have remaining, let me talk about a few of your high-profile cases. And I know that you've represented at one time or another Congressman Mel Reynolds, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But then you've done work for Ford Motor Company. I mean, how do you explain on one hand representing the Minister Farrakhan, but then on the other hand taking dollars from corporate America? I mean, don't you see some inconsistency there in terms of
what you're talking about for Ford Motor Credit? A lawyer who I knew when she was in Chicago that worked at a big firm was one of the head lawyers in litigation, and they had a situation where they needed one of the best lawyers in town, and they had quite frankly been solicited by 4 former U.S. attorneys, not assistants, for a class action case. Ford Motor Credit did not like being solicited by these former U.S. attorneys, and they turned to her to say, do you know anybody in Chicago that has not been the U.S. attorney that you would trust with this case? And she turned to me. I surfaced. I questioned them as much as they questioned me, and I wanted an assurance from them. And it was a discrimination case involving Hispanics. They had to convince me that if I investigated and found that they had discriminated in credit practices against Hispanics, that they would do the right thing. And after several meetings with them, I believed them. And after investigating them, I decided to take the case, and I'm glad I did. There are other corporations that have hired me on a similar basis. They sought me out. I didn't seek them out.
So you don't
but
see
everybody deserves a good lawyer.
You don't see any inconsistency then in you taking money from corporate America to fund your practice while you're at the same time out here representing, the young black man on the street who's being accused of the crime? It seems like you're playing both sides of the system, don't you think?
No. Often people worked in the house and they took out stuff as being the house Negro took out stuff to the field Negroes and helped them out. In this case, I have never compromised my integrity when I've worked in the house. I worked for a 300 lawyer firm here in Chicago, but I never changed my dynamics. I've worked for a 70 lawyer firm. But we have to use opportunities that, now I would not take a case that is detrimental to the black community or black individuals. I will not do that. Or Hispanics who have been discriminated against in a legitimate fashion, I will take a case on behalf of a corporation if the corporation deserves to be represented and if it's the right cause. But I'm not like other black lawyers in their own firms or these big law firms. If they ask me to represent them, I will choose to represent them if I want to, and I will reject the case because I would rather have, at the end of the day, my integrity than more money in my pocket.
Well, how can you reject a case if you say everybody needs representation? I mean,
there's a Negro that can represent that corporation, and it ain't me. I have to look at bill hooks in the morning. I have to look at bill hooks in the afternoon and at night. And so there are dozens of African American attorneys that will sell their soul to represent a corporation. I will work for a corporation if they're righteous, they want to correct something they did wrong, or they're wrongfully accused. That's the way I analyze a corporation situation. I am not going to take a business away from the other black attorneys in town that would be more capable, because in the middle of this case If they don't do the right thing, I'm going to tell them they're not doing the right thing, and I won't be there the next day.
But how can you turn a case away in the beginning if you haven't gone through the process of getting all the facts? It almost seems like you're doing the same things that you accuse the people in the system of doing, of turning away cases or
no.
before you know everything that's going on.
No, I do a very in-depth analysis, and I get a guarantee from the people that retain me that if during my investigation or the progress of the case I find out that they're wrong, particularly in a discrimination case, that they're going to do the right thing. The right thing means to settle the case or to make whole the person that they're discriminating against. I mean, here's an example. I will not represent a police officer if that police officer is part of a situation where they have impacted adversely upon a black person. I can't do that. I can't sleep at night. I don't need money that bad. There are a number of black attorneys that would sell their soul, and they would represent somebody that would kick their mother in the chin. That's not this lawyer.
Speaking of police and misconduct, what's your take on the John Burge incident, which everyone knows as, you know, investigation for torture and misdeeds involving, you know, many black men? Do you think the city has handled that properly?
Well, no, the city has not handled that properly. First of all, one of the decision maker for the city is the mayor of the city. The mayor of the city was involved as a state's attorney in this whole fiasco involving Burge. Burge is still receiving money from the city of Chicago as a retired police officer. Have they handled it right? No. The head lawyer for the city is the lawyer for the guy who was involved in the transactions when he was the superintendent of the police. The U.S. attorney, and I was on Channel 11 when they were talking about this U.S. attorney coming to town and being the new sheriff in town. Well, guess what? He's a new sheriff in town for white-collar crime. He's done a good job. He's a new sheriff in town in terms of rounding up black drug dealers who, in my opinion, are detrimental to the community. But he has not gone after Mayor Daley.
So are you saying to me that you believe that the mayor was personally involved or has some knowledge of the John Burge matter?
I'll analyze it like a Marine Corps officer would. When you are in charge of something, you're responsible for everything your unit does or fails to do. I could not explain to a Marine Corps general, if I was a company commander as a captain, that my unit did not accomplish its mission or it accomplished its mission illegally. Okay, that would be an unacceptable situation. If my unit failed, i.e. in his case, if there was torturing that took place that his assistants should have known about, whether he had a badge on or not, he was the biggest law enforcement official in Cook County when he was the state's attorney.
We've talked a lot about being a Marine, and before we close, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered specifically as a lawyer here in the city of Chicago?
I want to be remembered as the lawyer who went the full 9 for his or her client when they were righteous. If they were not righteous, I would not take their case. I want to be known as the lawyer who did not compromise his integrity by, for example, coming in and representing somebody that has been detrimental to the African American community. I want to be remembered as somebody that cared about his clients, selected his clients appropriately, and fought until the last blow was thrown, win, lose, or draw.
Well, Bill, on that note, I think we have to end, and I really appreciate you coming. And we're glad that you've all had the opportunity to not only hear Bill Hooks, but to join us for one of our early installments of hearing from some of the most famous and phenomenal judges here in the city of Chicago. I'm Vic Henderson, President of the Chicago Bar Association. Thank you so much for joining us.